Once again, we need to talk about Donald fucking Trump. And I'm very sorry. I know that we seem to talk about this guy every goddamn day, but we got to. So, Donald Trump, as you all know, was indicted. The only president in history to actually be indicted. And he made the history books again when he was indicted a second time. So it's like, so easily solidifying himself into those history books there, Mr. Trump. Have you read the indictment of Donald Trump? I highly recommend reading the indictment of Donald Trump because they kind of have him dead to rights here. And which is really sad because there is a very large chance that Trump basically gets away with it without very many consequences, pretty much at all. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the first thing is that, we have the judge in this case is, once again, Eileen Cannon. Which, if you remember who Eileen Cannon is, she's the one that appointed Donald Trump as the special master to this case. About a year ago when it first, broke or whatever, Donald Trump complained and said, oh, these are my own personal papers. Right. And she went along with it. She went along with his complaint. And she appoints what's called a special master, which is a guy that went through just to verify and go through every single document, because there was literally thousands of documents that Donald Trump absconded with. And they wasted all this time going through all these documents to see if any of them actually did belong to the government or if they belonged to Trump. And lo and behold, all of them belonged to the government. None of them belonged to Donald Trump. It was a giant waste of time. The special master was basically just set up there so that Donald Trump could delay. Because that's what Trump does. Throughout his entire life, every time he's been in a court, he's always had the time and resources in order to delay. Like, for example, if a contractor wanted to actually be paid for their work, and Donald Trump said, no, I'm not going to pay you because Donald Trump is notoriously cheap for a billionaire, then they would sue, and then Trump would just delay, and then whoever it was that was suing him would just make the calculation saying, okay, well, it's going to cost me more to sue him than it will be to get my payout, and they would usually give up because most people don't have tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars to spend on lawyers. Donald Trump does, and that's what he did through his entire life, and that's the exact same tactic that he's trying to take now with the United States government. And it didn't work because the United States government has more money than Donald Trump. For the first time ever, it's an opponent that he cannot just outlast. He cannot just delay until they go away. That's not going to happen this time. So that's the first thing, is that, Eileen Cannon is basically, he's got the judge in his pocket. That's the first bad thing. Now, what does that mean? That means she can do all kinds of crap in order to basically throw a monkey wrench into this trial. You know, she can render evidence inadmissible, stuff like that. She can side with the defense every time they object to things, stuff like that. Right. So she can give, directions to the jury for them to ignore certain cases, ignore certain evidence, she could say, okay, you're not allowed to take this part into consideration when you make your judgment, even though it might be something completely and totally relevant. So we'll see, There is a process to which they could get another judge, and hopefully the guy Jack Smith actually does that before it's too late. But the other thing is that even if he ends up getting a guilty verdict, which I don't see any way in hell that he wouldn't be found guilty here. They have him fucking dead to rights, folks. Right. But even if that were to happen, the particular statutes in which he is charged, there is no minimum sentence. So they could be like, okay, we find the defendant guilty, and then Eileen Cannon can just be like, okay, well, there will be no jail time. Bam. I sentence you to no jail time. She could just fine him. Okay, well, I sentence you, here's a $10,000 fine. And he could just pay it and then he could walk. The thing is, if it was anybody else, if it was any other person on Earth, any other politician, anybody, they'd be screwed. But I don't know. I'm getting the feeling the more I read about this, the more I'm worried. And I'm thinking Trump's going to walk. I'm thinking even if he is declared like guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, I'm thinking he doesn't get jailed. He's not getting jail time. Fuck no, he's not going to get jail time. So that's fucking bad right now. That's some bad news, and that really is. We're gonna see a travesty of justice come out of this. Just watch. In the meantime, this hasn't stopped all the conservatives and MAGA chuds and conserva chuds and right-wing Christian fucking insane people out there from basically threatening civil war over the fact that the orange orangutan is finally being held accountable for the first time in his fucking life for something. I want to show you guys a couple of tweets and reactions. This is from a guy named Not Jerome Powell, which I think is just some rando. I have no idea who he is. The thing about Twitter now is that anybody can get that stupid blue check mark, so that basically means nobody. Hillary's emails. Bart is blind. Biden's garage. He's still blind. Trump's documents. He's got a telescope. I mean, here's the thing about this, right? What does this mean trying to say that, oh, they just ignored it when Biden and Hillary broke this exact same law? But that's not what happened. That's not what happened at all. Hillary was investigated, and they found that she didn't actually break the law. She had her email server, and there were emails on there which were declared classified after she sent them, right? Or after she received them, or she received classified emails and didn't know about it. So she was declared innocent of that. The FBI found that no laws were actually broken there, and that's why she wasn't thrown in jail. Joe Biden, when he had classified information in his garage there, he sent his own lawyers, his own people, to search his property and find any classified information himself. He instigated that. They found it, and then they volunteered and returned it to the Justice Department and said, hey, we have these classified documents. You guys come and get them. That's what happened with Joe Biden. So that's the difference. Did Trump do that? No, Trump didn't do that. Trump purposely lied, said he gave everything back when he didn't, moved things around, sent his lawyers out and lied to his lawyer. Like, what he did is that he moved all the shit out of a room and then said, okay, they're in that room. And then the lawyer went in there and found, okay, well, there's nothing there. Lied to his own lawyer. Basically got his lawyer in trouble. Like, tricked his lawyer into lying to the investigators, which is against the law. And then his lawyer had to, come out and be like, hey, I didn't do this. Trump lied to me. Like, that's what fucking Donald Trump is doing. So, no. Not even close to the same fucking thing. But that's the thing, is that, it doesn't matter. There doesn't have to be any truth to it. All these guys are just going to have to do is, all they have to do is just post memes about Hillary and Biden. Oh, they did the same thing. Lock them up. And there doesn't have to be any truth to it because conspiracy theories do not require truth. They're just there to make people feel good. Here's Tim Pool. Tim Pool, as we all know, is a very, very famous not right-winger. At least he claims. He claims to be, I'm a leftist, I'm a liberal and all that shit. Of course you are, Tim. A long-standing politician is trying to stop, in all caps, his political opponent by arresting him on dubious charges. This must not stand. What exactly is dubious about not only lying to investigators, not only stealing top-secret government documents, which do not belong to you, right, and lying to investigators, but then also showing those documents off to people when you know that those things are still secret. See, they have a recording of Donald Trump actually saying that, showing these documents off to people, saying, hey, look at this. Oh, don't get too close. You're not supposed to see it. You don't have the clearance. That's the fucking audio they have. That, like when they say they have a smoking gun in this case, that's what it is. They have actual audio of Donald Trump specifically doing that. That is illegal. If you or I did that, we'd be rotting in fucking Guantanamo Bay right now with like a car battery, hooked up to our testicles or some shit. And the CIA would be shocking us repeatedly, trying to get us to tell them who we showed it to. Right? That's what's going on here. It's like, no, it's not a dubious charge. It is the most undubious charge ever. And it's not just some flippant thing that, like, because when they say that, look what it says, trying to stop his political opponent by arresting him. That makes it sound like some shit that, like, Putin did, or, like, you see that in other countries. Some fucking Tin Pot dictator arrests his political opponent on trumped up charges or some shit like that. It happens all over the fucking place. These are not trumped up charges. These are actual real charges with real evidence, a mountain of real fucking evidence. Do you honestly think that they would have arrested Donald Trump? They would have arrested an ex-president if they didn't have this evidence? The fuck out of here, Tim Pool. This is Cernovich, Mike Cernovich. I've read the indictment, and unfortunately, I do not have any candy to hand out. It's selective prosecution. It calls the legitimacy of our judicial system into question and leads this country on a dark path. Trump walked into this trap. Let's just break this down. By Mr. Mike Cernovich, he's a well-respected pundit. Selective prosecution. How? How is it selective? Right. Like we said before, because they go, well, Mike Pence and Joe Biden also had classified documents. Yeah, but like we just said, those guys turned their documents over. When the Department of Justice said, give these things to us, they did. Donald Trump did not do that. And in both of their cases, I think in Mike Pence's case too, they both volunteered to turn these things over. They found them themselves, volunteered to turn these over. Specifically because this investigation was heating up and they wanted to make sure their nose was clean. That's what actually happened. So how is it, and that's all Donald Trump had to do to avoid being prosecuted. Excuse me. To avoid being prosecuted. That's all he had to do was just cooperate and turn the shit in. And he didn't do that. He lied to investigators. He moved documents around on purpose. Here's another one. There's a story I saw where he basically wanted his lawyer to, like, pull the illegal ones out or whatever and then hand over. Like, this, I mean, that's just obstruction of justice, like, right there. Like, ridiculous. How does this lead our country on a dark path? I mean, it seems to me the path would be dark if we just let him get away with it. Whenever a president does something illegal, because there's been other times where presidents have done illegal things, they've always gotten away with it. Every single time. And that's just something that's a privilege that we just give our presidents. We allow them to do illegal shit. And then just retire with the understanding that after they're not president anymore, they just go away. So you got to think about how fucking bad is it? How bad is it if they're going to actually arrest and prosecute an ex-president? Like, the case has to be water fucking tight. Because they know if they don't, they know if they do it and they lose, and there's any holes in their case at all, then not only is their careers over, it's like, basically, they might as well just forget it. It's gone. They will never work again. Any of them, anyone involved in the case will never work again. And it would be a giant fucking shit show. So, bullshit. Absolute fucking bullshit. And then what is this? Trump walked into the trap. That kind of alludes that, this is all a setup. The FBI, they purposely brought 50 boxes of fucking classified documents into Trump's bathroom. What, in the middle of the night or something? Is that what they did? Did they, like, sneak in and shit? Like, here's the thing. It's like, it's in Trump's fucking bathroom, right? So, You ever see those spy movies? Something like fucking Mission Impossible or whatever, and like Tom Cruise has to get to the computer in order to get the top secret information, right? And he's like, dodging lasers and stuff, doing acrobatics to get through like fucking this laser grid, and he's like crawling through the air ducts and then lowering himself down like on a wire, and because you got to be super quiet and you can't touch the floor that's pressure sensitive, and that way you can access this computer or whatever. All of this shit, it's like, and in real life, just to be a spy, like all they would have to do is just get someone a job as like the fucking janitor at Mar-a-Lago. And then they could just walk into Trump's fucking bathroom and like get all the documents they need. You don't even need to do that. You don't even need to like get someone a job there. You could just have like a tourist walking around Mar-a-Lago and walk up and be like, "Hey, where's the nearest bathroom?" And like, "Oh, that one right over there. Watch out for all those boxes. Oh, gee, thanks." It's fucking embarrassing, folks. Absolutely fucking embarrassing. Oh my God. Here's one from Donald Trump Jr. Of course, obviously, Trump Jr. is going to have something to say about this. This indictment is just more evidence that there's one rule for Democrats and one rule for the rest of us. How is it different? What are the fuck are you talking about? Is there an example of a Democrat breaking the law in the way that Donald Trump did? No. No, there isn't. Yeah, it's, if anything, this shows how privileged Donald Trump himself actually is. Not just ex-president. Because if you imagine, like, say this was Barack Obama, if they'd be going this easy on Barack Obama, probably not. They probably would have arrested him a long time ago if it was Barack Obama. Right. Let's be real. But if anything, Donald Trump is the most privileged person on the face of the earth right now. He's an ex-president who's also a billionaire, who also has his own social fucking media network and an entire alternative media just sphere that makes excuses for his every fucking move. And here's the thing about this. Everybody knows. Every single one of these people that I'm mentioning here, they know what the actual truth is. Tim Pool, Mike Cernovich, this guy, Trump Jr. fucking totally knows. They all know it's lies. Every single one of them knows exactly what's going on, and they're lying to you. And that's what really gets me about that. All of them, they're all lying to your face right now. When they turn around and they say, "Oh, Donald Trump is innocent, and this is Presidential Records Act," all that shit. Every single one of them knows exactly the bullshit that they're spewing right now. Let's see here. So here is Tommy Lauren. She's actually got a video here, which I want to talk a little bit about. I want to skip to around 11:30 because Tommy Lauren is kind of a shrill, sort of, ridiculous goose-stepping harpy, and I can barely listen to her voice. But there's one part of this video that I did actually see and I want to kind of respond to. So this, of course, I don't know who this asshole is who she's talking to, but if you want to see this for yourself, I'll put this down in the chat for you guys so that you can actually go and watch this in its entirety if you feel like it. I recommend not doing that because it's, Tommy Lauren, and her voice can, her voice can, make your sack shrivel up. But let's continue. Come on, fuck you, Twitter. Play, you piece of shit. For fuck's sake. Well, whatever. Okay, we won't watch the video. But anyway, basically it goes on to say that, if you read the tweet here, is it conceivable that Donald Trump could spend the rest of his life in federal prison? This is wild to think about, especially when Biden is the treasonous one. And they talk about how, basically, if you read the indictment, Trump is up shit creek. And it's funny how even her guest is like, "Yeah, well, I'm sorry. Joe Biden's bad, all this, he's a traitor, but read the indictment, Donald Trump is fucking up the creek without a paddle." How exactly is Biden a treasonous? That's the thing. It's like, can anyone explain to me how Joe Biden committed treason and in what manner and with who? Like, how? What? Burisma or some shit like that? Like, do you have any evidence of that? Like, no. So that's the thing. There doesn't have to be any evidence. They just have to say it. Like, what did Biden do that he committed treason? Like, what did he? I don't know. Please, someone explain that to me. Please, anybody out there who's a MAGA supporter, explain to me what Joe Biden did that is so damn treasonous. And also, fuck Twitter, because Twitter, I went through all this shit to set that up, and then it doesn't work. But fuck it, I'm not going to sit here for 2 hours trying to get this shit to work. So fuck Twitter. Let's move on. This is Mark Levin on Fox News. Mark Levin demolishes the BS indictment against Trump and rips Biden's corrupt DOJ for how they're weaponizing the government to target Biden's leading political rival. I love how, whenever like a law like a Republican breaks a law and there's consequences, suddenly that's weaponizing the government. Do you think they'd be saying we're weaponizing the government if Joe Biden was the one that was in the hot seat right now? What about, like, you remember back when they put Hillary Clinton through like 17 different like congressional hearings? Like, one of them I remember was like 8 hours long over fucking Benghazi. Would you call that weaponizing the government? That kind of sounds like weaponizing the government to me. Anyway, let's listen to what Mark Levin has to say.
Biden administration, no limits for the retention of power. Simply no question about it. Joe Biden said the other day that he had nothing to do with any of this when it comes to the investigation of Donald Trump. He's a liar. He's a liar about shell corporations. He's a liar about money from communist China. He's a liar about money from Ukraine, a liar about money from Romania. He's a liar about documents. He's a liar about his own history.
So, first off, all of that shit he just said right there, by the way, money from China, liar about money from Ukraine and all that, there's no evidence for any of that. The money from the Burisma and Ukraine thing that they're talking about right now there's a complaint. Basically a complaint that the FBI investigated and found that there was no merit to. The complaint says that one of the Burisma executives has 17 audio recordings of Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, like, accepting $5 million in bribes or whatever, right? They found that was unsubstantiated. And that's why it was just a complaint and not an investigation. Someone made that complaint. So here's the thing. Anybody can file a complaint like that. Kind of like the VAERS thing with... it's sort of the exact same sort. Well, not the exact same thing, but it's very comparable. The VAERS thing for vaccinations, if you remember. VAERS is the system by which ordinary people can go in and put in, my husband got the vaccine and then his knee hurt 2 weeks later. Or, my grandfather got the vaccine and then he had a heart attack 2 months later. Stuff like that. And it doesn't actually mean anything because anyone can write anything in there. That doesn't mean that it actually was caused by the vaccine. This is the same kind of deal. It's like anybody can make a criminal complaint, but if there's no investigation behind it, right, it doesn't matter. And if they make this sort of preliminary investigation and they find that there was no truth behind the complaint, then the complaint doesn't matter. I was going to do kind of a segment on this, but it's already sort of still going on in the news. I want to give it a few days, so I'm thinking maybe next weekend we'll talk about it. But that sort of oligarch, that executive from Burisma, right, in the Ukraine, they're now saying that guy's missing. And in fact, I saw just before I went on, there was a story in the news where Rudy Giuliani said that this executive was dead, and it's like, oh, he's gone. They can't find him, so he must be dead. When in real life, it's like, oh, they can't find him because in real life, what's going on is this complaint was bullshit. It had no basis in fucking reality. Yeah. until they can come up with some evidence. It's like, okay, well then, where are these tapes at? What's the guy's name? Like, tell us this whistleblower, quote unquote's name. Like, it's such bullshit. So, but that's the thing, is that this guy Mark Levin knows that, because it's his job to know these things. He's a political pundit. His job is to basically go through the news and have his staff go research things so that he can talk about them. And he knows that, oh, well, this is just a complaint, but there's no actual evidence of any of this shit. But he says it anyway. He doesn't give a fuck about the truth. He's a fucking hack. Moving on.
We have a man in the Oval Office who is a pathological liar. But that said, Biden signed off on FBI review of Trump records, National Archives letters reveal. This is from August.
Okay.
August.
Biden signs off on National Review of Archive letters. Let's rewind that one more time. Let's say what he just said. I want to make sure I don't get that wrong.
History. We have a man in the Oval Office who is a pathological liar. But that said, Biden signed off on FBI review of Trump records.
Biden signed off on FBI review of Trump records. Okay. That's what we're talking about, right?
National Archives letters reveal. This is from August. August.
Okay.
What are they talking about? Biden White House, at the request of the Department of Justice, signed off to have the FBI and intelligence community to examine hundreds of pages of classified information former President Trump had. NARA informed the Department of Justice about the discovery, which prompted the department to ask the president to request NARA to provide the FBI with access to the boxes at issue so that the FBI and others in the intelligence community could examine them.
Okay. So, the FBI and others in the intelligence community made a request to review these boxes of classified information that they retrieved from Donald Trump. And Joe Biden had to sign off on that. Okay.
So there you have NARA going to the Department of Justice, which is extraordinary. The Department of Justice saying, wait, you can't come to us directly, you have to go through the White House. Then they go back, circle back to the White House counsel's office, and Joe Biden.
Okay.
And they agree to send the matter to the Department of Justice, knowing damn well what would happen. And that's what triggered the entire thing.
So, what exactly did... What's wrong with that, exactly? I mean, listen to what he just said, right? Well, here, let's give it 5 more seconds.
General warrants, the Fourth Amendment of your Constitution, the Bill of Rights. This warrant that was issued by a federal magistrate judge.
Okay.
The framers of your Constitution hated general warrants, or what were called writs of assistance. Why? Because they were used by the king to rummage through their homes, to rummage through their businesses.
What does this have to do with what he just said? All right, let's listen to what he just said. Okay. He said that Joe Biden lied about not being involved in the investigation. Okay. What he cited for that as evidence is that the White House had to sign off on and NARA is the National Records Administration, something like that, right? Basically, NARA is like, yeah, they're the guys that they're like the archive. When you have government records, they're the department in charge of keeping all that together, that kind of thing. So basically, what he said is that Joe Biden signed off on a NARA request by the Department of Justice to examine the records that they seized from Donald Trump, right? Because those documents and records were classified information. Why would Joe Biden have to sign off on that? Because Joe Biden is the president, and the president is the one who gets to decide what is classified and what isn't. So how is that a lie? Does that mean that Joe Biden is directing the investigation? No. That doesn't mean Joe Biden is sending people to go arrest Trump. That means that they found this evidence The investigators need to examine the evidence, but the evidence is classified. So they have to get permission to examine the evidence. How the fuck is that Joe Biden interfering in the investigation? How's that him having any oversight of the investigation at all? It's like, that's the thing, is that, see, you listen to these assholes when they talk, but if you actually like examine, like, and it makes it sound like, when they talk, it makes it sound like, oh, this is all bad shit and all this other stuff. He's a crook, he's a criminal. It's because, because you're listening if you just listen to this on the radio or something while you're driving, or if you're like at home doing housework or whatever, something like that, you're not actually hearing what he's saying. You're just sort of listening to his tone of voice. And you're listening to his inflection. And you go, oh, this must be really bad. But if you take 2.5 nanoseconds to actually examine like what he's actually saying, it's like, no, this guy Levin just completely misrepresented what that entire thing said. Just basically said, this is Joe Biden sending his goons to illegally prosecute Donald Trump, his political opposition. It's like, when in real life, no, it is not Joe Biden or the White House interfering or having any influence on the investigation whatsoever. Giving the sign off so that investigators can look at classified information is not directing the investigation. It's complete and total horseshit. They have nothing. That's the thing about this, is that they have absolutely fucking nothing, but they don't have to have anything. They don't have to have any justification whatsoever. They just have to say it with inflection and authority. Because they know the fucking people, because this guy, Mark Levin, knows that the stupid fucking people that watch him don't have more than 3 brain cells to fucking rub together. Right? And they're gonna eat it up fucking hook, line, and sinker. That's why our country is so fucked up, folks. Seriously. Like, oh my god. Okay. Here's one from CHUDS of TikTok, which, just to kind of illustrate, this video's been going viral lately, of this sort of tattooed alt-looking girl. This video here has been going a little viral, so we're going to watch this. But just to kind of illustrate to you, just to sink it home, of how these talking points can get disseminated out there amongst the populace, right? Let's watch. This is just a normal fucking person. This lady here is not famous. She's not anybody. She's just a normal fucking person giving her take on this. But let's listen to what she's got to say.
All right, we need to discuss, because lately some shit's been going on, and I just haven't really been talking about it because it's the same shit over and over again. At this point in America, if you haven't realized that everything that they accuse Trump of doing, they've actually done themselves, then we're not going to get anywhere with this conversation. But you're over here telling me that Trump committed...
They have not done themselves, by the way. That's the thing. Nobody has done what Donald Trump has done. Okay. Pence and Obama and Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton and everybody else, right, cooperated with this kind of thing. They all cooperated with it. In fact, people who didn't cooperate, right, like say there was a story about a kid who was like a 4chan troll that leaked a bunch of classified information about the Ukraine offensive that's going on right now, and he's been arrested and all that stuff. You notice it didn't take a year to arrest that guy, right? He had classified documents that he stole too. And like within a week, he's already been arrested and charged and is going to be thrown in a fucking hole for the rest of his life. Yet Donald Trump does it. It takes a goddamn year where he's just been free, running around delaying and fucking obstructing justice and like doing all and turning like the public against the prosecutors and everything. So that's the actual what's really going on here, is that Donald Trump is being treated with like beyond fucking kid gloves in this case. But anyway, let's move on.
Committed these heinous crimes, and he needs to be indicted, and he can't run for president in 2024 because he took documents out of the White House as a sitting president, which he has every legal right to do with the Presidential Records Act.
Donald Trump is not the president when these things left. When this happened after he was no longer the president, we have video of him as he's leaving the White House, right? And his sort of movers are walking out with boxes upon boxes upon boxes of these classified information like this, of government records in general. So no, he was not the sitting president. If you're the sitting president, yeah, you can do whatever you want, right? As the actual president, who's like the president current, you are in charge. You get to decide what's classified and what isn't. And even though it would be really bad, he could come out and be like, okay, all this nuclear shit no longer classified. He could say that, yeah. He's not the president. He's not the sitting president. He was not the sitting president when he stole these things. Remember, he didn't accidentally take these, or they didn't accumulate at his house or whatever. He stole this shit when he was no longer the president. That's what's going on here. But let's rewind that just a little bit, because I don't want to cut her off any.
Because he took documents out of the White House as a sitting president, which he has every legal right to do with the Presidential Records Act.
Not the sitting
He can
president.
declassify and take any fucking thing that he wants. It doesn't matter how the Congress feels. It doesn't matter how AOC feels. It doesn't matter how any crybaby fucking Democrats feel. Presidential Records Act is in place for them to take whatever they want out of the White House.
Incorrect. That is incorrect. Right. Now, we could watch the rest of this shit, but I'll put this down in the chat for you too if you want. But it's basically this girl repeating the same bullshit over and over and over that has no basis in fucking reality. There it is down in the chat for you. But I thought, when I was watching this, okay, she says, okay, they can take whatever they want for the Presidential Records Act. I thought it might be good for us to kind of go and take a look at what the Presidential Records Act actually says. So let's go to Wikipedia. This is the Presidential Records Act in Wikipedia. The Presidential Records Act, PRA of 1978. Governing is an act of Congress governing the official records the presidents and vice presidents created. So let's kind of read this history part before we get into the provisions, because I just realized it's not going to make sense if we don't do that. The Presidential Records Act was enacted in 1978 after President Richard Nixon sought to destroy records relating to his presidential tenure upon his resignation in 1974. Why did he do that? Because of Watergate, of course. So he wanted to destroy all evidence of his crimes. The law superseded the policy in effect during Nixon's tenure that a president's records were considered private property, making clear that presidential records are owned by the public. Did you hear that? That part right here, making clear that presidential records are owned by the public. So they do not belong to Donald Trump. They are not his private papers. They're not his to do with whatever he wants. Presidential Record Act doesn't say that he gets to take all of his shit and it belongs to him and it's private. No. It says that these records, if they even are presidential records, which top secret information is not, says that they belong to the public. Now keep that in mind. Top secret information, the things that Donald Trump is being accused of stealing, things that you don't even have to say accused, the things that he fucking did steal. He stole them. The things he stole, those are not presidential records. He stole plans dealing with nuclear weapons, the nuclear capability of the United States, nuclear capability of other countries, military contingency plans in case of an invasion. These are the things that he stole and he was showing off to people. That shit is not presidential. You know what a presidential record is? Like a memo that, he wrote one day, directing the fucking public relations director to go blow up fucking 10,000 balloons for an event that week or some shit like that. That's like a presidential record, okay? Flight logs of how many people came with him to his trip to India or something. That's a presidential record, right? Top secret information detailing nuclear capability of the United States is not a presidential record. That's bullshit. All right. Moving on. Presidential Records Act requires the president to ensure preservation of records documenting the performance of his official duties. Provides for the National Archives and Records Administration. That's what NARA is, National Archives and Records Administration. To take custody and control of the records. And sets forth a schedule of staged public access to such records. So that's what it means. It means that NARA, National Archives and Records Administration, are the ones who are supposed to be in charge of presidential records, not the actual president themselves. So you don't take the shit and put it in your bathroom. NARA is supposed to be in possession of these things, take custody and control of the records, sets forth a schedule of staged public access to such records, right? I think what it is after 5 years, they're supposed to make everything available to the public. That's why you go to a presidential library, for example. You have the Reagan Library, and you have the Bush Library, and the Clinton Library, and you can go look these things up if you want to. That's why presidents have libraries, because that's where all their records are at. Records covered by the PRA encompass documentary materials relating to the political activities of the president or members of the president's staff, if they concern or have an effect upon carrying out of constitutional, statutory, or other official or ceremonial duties of the president. That does not include nuclear secrets. That does not include defense memos. That does not include the daily defense, minute meetings and stuff like that. Like every single day, the president gets a thing from the Department of Defense detailing all the shit that's happening in the world. Most of which is classified. It doesn't include any of that stuff. You know what this is? This includes things like, what would be a presidential record? The letters that Kim Jong-un sent to Donald Trump. The love letters they sent back and forth. Right? But does that belong to Donald Trump? No. Those are presidential records. Those are public. Those belong to the public. But that would be something that he would be allowed to that would be covered under the Presidential Records Act. Right. Not the military plans to invade North Korea. Or whatever. Now let's read the provisions. Defines and states public ownership of the records. The records belong to the public. Places the responsibility for the custody and management of incumbent presidential records with the president. So they belong to the public. Management of the records go with the president. What does that mean? That means the president is the one who has to set up the library. The president is the one who has to set it up so that it's available to the public. But they don't belong to him. They're not his property. Right? Allows the incumbent president to dispose of records that no longer have administrative, historical, informational, evidentiary value once he or she has obtained the views of the archivist of the United States on the proposed disposal in writing. I.e., this cocktail napkin that I did a math problem on or whatever, that can be thrown away because that doesn't matter. Or this slip of paper that I wrote a phone number down on, I can just get rid of that. But you see what it says? It means that they're not allowed to just shred this stuff or throw it in the toilet or tear it up like Donald Trump did. Donald Trump was should be in trouble for that shit too. All throughout his presidency, he would do stuff like tear up official records or flush them down the toilet. He would do it constantly. And it was so bad that these guys would have to go through the trash and tape shit back up. I'm not joking about that either. That's actual true, right? Establishes a process for restriction of public access to these records. Process for restriction and public access to the records. Specifically, PRA allows the public access to presidential records through the Freedom of Information Act, beginning 5 years after the end of the administration, but allows the president to invoke as many as 6 specific restrictions to public access for up to 12 years. So they can be, okay, I don't want people knowing about this shit right away. Here's that one time that we used the presidential credit card to buy a bunch of hookers for fucking the president of Mexico or something. Okay, well, I don't want people knowing about that. So for 12 years, they can restrict that. Requires that vice president's records are treated in the same way. Establishes that the presidential records automatically transfer to the legal custody of the archivist as soon as the president leaves office. You see that? They don't belong to the president. They belong to the public. Establishes a procedure for Congress, courts, and subsequent administrations to obtain special access to records from NARA that remain closed to the public. Following a privilege review, period, by the former and incumbent presidents, this procedures governing such special cases requests continue to be governed by the relevant provisions of executive order, blah, 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 blah. So the courts and the Congress get to see those credit card receipts when they bought a bunch of hookers for the president of Mexico, but we don't. Makes perfect sense. Establishes in law that any incumbent presidential records, whether textual or electronic, held on courtesy storage by the archivist remain in the exclusive legal custody of the president, and that any request or order for access to such records must be made to the president, not NARA. See that? So he gets to decide, yeah, you don't get to see the hooker records. You can see, like, here's the receipts for the ice cream we bought him afterwards, but not the hooker records, right? He gets to decide that for up to 12 years. Establishes preservation requirements for official business conducted using non-official electronic messaging accounts. Any individual creating presidential records must not use non-official electronic messaging accounts unless that individual copies an official account as the message is created or forwards a complete copy of the record of an official messaging account. Why is this? It's because they don't want people using their own private servers, because these messages belong to the United States government and not them. So if they send an email, for example, they have to make a copy of that email, and they have to put it, and it has to be archived away, right? Because it belongs to the public. And that's what that is. This is like, when you say your own private email server, you're not allowed to use these things. Please remember, Hillary Clinton was not the president. And so this didn't apply to her, right? It applies to the president. Here's the other thing. Donald Trump broke this one too. A lot. Using his own cell phone that wasn't vetted by the government, stuff like that. Using his own private email accounts that he used for the Trump business to send official government business. Yes, he's very much guilty of breaking this provision. Requires that the president and his staff take all practical steps to file personal records separately from presidential records. Right? What would be a personal record exactly? A personal record would be a letter to his daughter, something like that, a Christmas card that somebody sent him, a private text that he sent to his mistress. Hey, babe, can't come around here anymore. I'm the president now. Right? Something like that. That would be a private record, something that has absolutely nothing to do with the government whatsoever. Right? Remember, the special master determined that none of these records were private. Right. Prevents an individual who has been convicted of a crime related to the review, retention, removal, or destruction of records from being given access to any original records. That's what the Presidential Record Act says. Presidential Record Act does not say, let's go ahead and turn this off. It does not say he gets to do whatever he wants with them. It does not say that he could take these things anytime he felt like it and that he doesn't have to give them back. It does not say that any of these belong to him and not the government. It doesn't say anything of the sort. Why did that girl say all of this shit? Because that girl has no actual fucking clue what the Presidential Act really says. Neither does anybody else who fucking voted for Donald Trump. Anybody else who's defending him through this thing. Because assholes like Mike Cernovich and Mark Levin and Don Jr. and fucking all of the other talking head pieces of shit out there who have been just basically fucking obstructing the truth here. Let's go ahead and merge that down. All of these people have basically, he has an entire media sphere of pundits that are defending his ass because they know that their constituents, that Trump's constituents, Trump's base, don't give a fuck, and they'll go on. They'll take the smallest little hint of justification and just run with it, and that's what's going on right now. They have basically an entire sort of constituency who's just been trained to not think critically and to accept any fucking thing that's said to them. So yeah, you can't really blame that girl for not knowing what the presidential records. What is she going to do? Go look up the Presidential Records Act? Fuck no. She's not going to do that. That requires work. But more than just work, it requires the actual desire to know what the truth is. She doesn't care what the truth is. None of them actually give a fuck what the truth is. And that's what we need to remember, right? We need to remember because we're dealing with fascists. Trump is a goddamn fascist. All of these people who are defending him are fascists. Yes, they are. They're fascists. We can say that with confidence now. Absolute 100% dyed-in-the-wool fascists who don't give a fuck about the actual truth. Who don't care about the rule of law. Right? And they'll lie and say anything they want and anything they can to twist that around so that they come out on top. That's why it's so goddamn important that Trump gets held accountable for this. If we let him get away with this shit, then it's over. It's like, forget it. The United States is over. Put a fork in it. It's done. And if for God's sakes, if he becomes president again, I don't know. Time to fucking move to Canada. Hello folks, if you like what I do and you want to support the channel, please consider buying something from my Etsy shop, supporting me on Patreon, liking and subscribing, and checking me out across my social media links listed below. Thank you all so much, and see you next time.